Thanks, Ranjini, for putting the spotlight. Okay, Zoom has just opened on the Attendify. So there'll be people arriving. Where is everyone coming from? Hey, Gopal. Nice to see you, Gopal. And Ismail.
How's it going?
Good. Nice to see you here.
Likewise, looking forward to this.
Kostu, can you make David? Oh, he's not here yet.
Perfect. So we are live on YouTube as well. Great. Okay.
Where is everyone coming from? Maybe write in the chat. I see a huge diversity of representation here.
Hi, Gulam.
Hello, this is Ghulam Muhammad from Pakistan. Good afternoon, I think.
Shall we start, Kostu?
I think so. We can. How many people do we have here already? 22. Yeah, let's give ourselves maybe another minute or so, Justine.
Sure. Some people, I think, are streaming it from Attendify.
I guess. Well. Yes. Okay. One more minute and then we'll start. Yeah. Is that okay? So did any of you watch the previous video presentation by Natalie Schmidt? I find it very interesting, the work that's going on in developing this new tool, which will make it possible to do species identifications using genetics in the field with almost like a slip of paper. Okay, so we have David here, I think. No, David's on the...
He's here. Yeah,
oh, he's here?
You can make him call.
Ah, there he is. Okay, great. All right, so let's start, I think. All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I know some of you are joining from the other part of the world, and hope you slept well yesterday after that overload of information from our end. Now, today what we are going to really do is get a little, delve a little deeper into what's going on in PAWS, and a few of our country partners are going to showcase the work that's being done or that's being planned in different countries. None of this means that other countries are not are anyway far behind. It's just that these three countries, we thought they represent a nice diversity of the work that's going on under PAWS. But before we do that, some of you might remember yesterday we had a brief discussion about how we started and where we stand at this point in time. And to our surprise at this point, Justine, Ranjini, and I, we are so overwhelmed and grateful to the support that each of you has provided with sharing information for the for the metadata that we have tried to put together. So without really coming in between you and our next speaker, which is Justine, who's going to talk about the PAWS global metadata update. And please hold on to your seats because it's spectacular. You're going to love what Justine shows next. So over to you, Justine. Muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Kustub. Can you see my screen?
We do.
Great. So hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. As Kustub said, I'm Justine, and I'm going to present on behalf of the PAWS team and on behalf of all of the teams across the range today. And yesterday we had really an exceptional, interesting interaction with leading experts and thinkers in different fields related to PAWS, along with around 40 PAWS partners and practitioners across the world. And we were very happy to see a number of country teams represented. Many of the videos from yesterday's breakout sessions are now available in the GSEP virtual platform, and many of them are coming. So thank you for joining us then. And yesterday we were able to touch upon a number of areas where PAWS has made progress, as Kustub just highlighted, so that we hope that yesterday's discussion feeds into today's more formal agenda. So I'm starting this session with an update on the PAWS progress, taking stock of what teams across the range have already achieved so far. And we presented a summary version of this during the GSLAP steering committee last week. But today we have the opportunity to go into more depth and discuss some of the implications of the update. So I just want to say at this stage of the presentation, just based on what we collated so far by the GSLAP PAWS team, we recognize that there's still other information out there and efforts across the range that are not displayed here, but we hope to get in touch with those efforts in the future. So this is, I guess we can say, even just a subset of potentially what work has been done across the range. So as we look back at the PAWS objectives, I just wanted to remind us about how ambitious and potentially significant the PAWS initiative will be for snow leopard conservation. So as many of you know what PAWS stands for, but just in case, it's the Population Assessment of the World's Snow Leopards that aims to generate a truly robust estimate of how many snow leopards there are across the 12 countries in Asia, across an area that could be 1 to 2 million square kilometers. So the task of GSLAP has set itself with the support of all range governments is no easy task. But it is really important because it provides a really important baseline for understanding the status of the species and how it changes over time, especially related to global threats. It is a key point of reference as we assess our conservation efforts. It is also a keystone for international advocacy for the snow leopard as a species, based on science. And finally, I think it goes, as we discussed yesterday, it goes wider than the snow leopard and provides an indicator of health for high mountain areas, for people, wildlife, and other species. So as many of you know, the PAWS initiative was launched in 2017 through the GSEP Bishkek Declaration, and this is still an ambitious goal of estimating population of snow leopards by 2022. So we are halfway there. So what has been the progress so far? So as Kustub shared, we're really thrilled to share this recent update. So across all the snow leopard range, governments and teams have now been able to collate a first set of surveys of snow leopard abundance in their countries. And we have collated information from 29 teams across all snow leopard range countries so far. So we were really encouraged to actually get the latest updates from Uzbekistan and Afghanistan just this week, so that we covered all 12 countries. So a special thanks to these teams and all the other teams across the range. So these 29 teams, they represent 125 different survey sites, which have been identified by governments and national teams and submitted to PAWS. So the green boxes that you can see on this map, they represent 79 of these sites that took place between 2017 to 2020 and meet PAWS guidelines. So what do we mean when we say meet PAWS guidelines? Well, we mean potentially covering at least 400 kilometers squared each, and camera traps set up systematically for at least 3 months. But as mentioned yesterday during the PAWS, during the Solve My Problem session, PAWS guidelines for SCR are relatively open, but retain a strong emphasis on collecting snow leopard individual recaptures and covering large areas to have these kind of recaptures and ensuring that the SCR models are robust and comparable. So this map, as you can see, captures how teams in very different ecological settings, from the north of Russia, the Gobi in Mongolia, to the southern, more Himalayan mountains, to Afghanistan, are following similar methods and putting in effort that meet the PAWS guidelines and can be used for an estimate of the global snow leopard population. And at a minimum, these 79 sites that meet PAWS kind of guidelines cover 133,000 kilometers squared. So that's an estimated to equal between 6 to 7% of what is believed to be the snow leopard range. So this, as Kustub just shared, is really extraordinary achievement. We were really surprised to see already such a huge effort in the field. And I think a huge tribute is deserved to all the teams working at the local country level and really contributing to this really important effort. So please, thank you all for really submitting and contributing to this global work. However, we should recognize that it still leaves us some important gaps in coverage. And all this information has been brought together only in the last few weeks, actually. We didn't even have a real understanding of the effort until just recently, because this was prepared for the GSLEP Steering Committee meeting. But there still is further work that needs to be done. For example, we hope to follow up with additional teams that have not, for example, been able to submit their information yet. We also need to understand further the gaps in more detail, country by country, and with the different teams to kind of understand what are the further gaps. And David will share a little bit more about how one could do this in a later session today. However, from our preliminary assessment in collaboration with the PAWS Technical Committee, it suggests that currently sites may be biased to more rugged landscapes. So the blue in this graph, the blue columns, they seem to indicate that the current levels of coverage of ruggedness index of the 125 sites. So they're the coverage of the 125 sites. While the red bars, the other red bars, indicate ruggedness averages across the snow leopard range, so predicted predicted for the snow leopard range. And if you look at it, it's quite interesting because it shows a tendency for PAWS sites to select more rugged areas of around an index of 300 to 400, while snow leopard habitats tend to be more even and found between 0 to 400. So this may therefore suggest that there's a bias in sites to more rugged areas. So higher ruggedness could be seen as an indicator of more suitable habitats for snow leopard. The data we have at the moment, therefore, could mean that there's not yet a full understanding of snow leopard abundance in less favorable habitats. And again, we need to look at this closely at regional level and country level, but this is a kind of a global kind of indication at this stage. And we'll have to look at this in further detail, and we'll keep everyone updated. And as an example of such biases towards favorable habitats, teams in Mongolia actually have assessed coverage in more detail. So I think Gantulga is going to share more about this in the next presentation, but from the map to the left, you can see the whole snow leopard distribution. So this is in the occupancy surveys that they did at the country level in this kind of coloring scheme, covering from the Gobi all the way to the Altai. And the black areas in the map are where teams have already surveyed with camera traps, which is a huge coverage of large areas of the country. But if we were to use the data from the current sites, simulations from the PAWS team and WWF Mongolia suggest that Mongolia's snow leopard population would be overestimated by up to potentially 25%. This is because few current sites cover low habitat areas, which are seen in like yellow or lower kind of greenish areas in the map in Hungai or the Western Gobi. So the teams in Mongolia are now planning to cover some of these other sites in less suitable occupancy areas in order to take into account and reduce this bias. And as Ian articulated yesterday, the simulations suggest that they only need to cover a few sites in these less snow leopard occupancy sites. But I'll let Gantulga share a little bit more about this and the strategic national effort in Mongolia in the next talk. So another potential gap that's from our preliminary observations using the PAWS data so far is that many surveys are found in protected areas. So at least 32% of sites are in protected areas. And it could be higher because we actually don't have the information on all of the sites, whether they're protected or not. And this is much higher than what is predicted to be across the entire snow leopard range. As an example, this map is from a publication in 2016 that suggests that there are around 170 protected areas that overlap with what is classified as definitely or probably inhabited by snow leopards. And that equals to around 18% of the range. So non-protected areas may need our explicit attention in future surveys. So I've just shared with you some really great news about how much we have covered already, but we also are collating information on what is planned. So what we shared was what's happened since 2017, so in the last year, but there are teams that are already out there collecting more information as we speak, or do plan to do more surveys in the next year or two. And there are at least 22 sites that have been identified in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Nepal, Uzbekistan, and Mongolia, and that are being surveyed using PAWS guidelines. And some of the teams are working with our help desk to try to minimize bias that we were talking about yesterday. So we're still hoping that this number will increase across the range. But I think what's most important than the actual numbers of surveys is we need to emphasize the need to address some of the gaps that potentially we've already talked about, or gaps that we'll identify in the future, so that there's less bias in national and global estimates. So it's too early for our teams to provide specific recommendations, but we hope to be working with teams in the future and see what remains to be done. And David will share a little bit more about this in the way forward in the next session. And just to highlight, one of the features of PAWS that I would like to end with, and that Kustub will provide more of an overview with in his session, is capacity building. And we hope that this is one of PAWS' major long-term contributions for snow leopards. So as part of PAWS, there has been considerable progress in building tools and capacities in each country in study design, planning, data analysis. And it reminds us that PAWS is more than a number, because over 250 people, for example, have been engaged, Kustub highlighted yesterday, throughout the range and trained in PAWS best practices. So this capacity building aspect of PAWS is one that we hope to continue in this next phase, and we hope the benefits will go beyond the final estimate itself. So summing up, I think there are three guiding principles that has guided PAWS so far since it began in 2017, in the last 3 years, and that we hope they will continue to take us forward in the next stage. And the first one has really been the emphasis on the latest science, which has actually evolved also in the last 3 years, thanks to our technical team. And there has been we've been trying to take advantage and make these new methods available to teams across the range as rapidly as possible and adapting them to the local conditions. And I just wanted to recognize that much of these developments are also thanks to many of the teams at the national or field level that are contributing and working to develop many of these methods. So thank you everyone across the range for contributing to this global effort. And another key theme that we've heard a lot about yesterday and today is collaborations and sharing best practices. And I think it's so significant. We've seen already 79 sites across the 12 countries are using similar methods to survey snow leopards. And I mean, that's a huge achievement. And I think it's as a result of this open source science and individual scientists sharing and coming together to survey snow leopards. And finally, with such a large coverage so far, it highlights this very national commitment, which is vital to PAWS and to see it take forward. But before I end, I just wanted to mention that in yesterday's discussion came up many ideas of how these three themes can be taken forward, and we look forward to further discussions later today. But this update really aims to set an idea of what's going on and to explore further with our next set of speakers. And we really welcome any comments or updates at the end of the series of talks. So don't forget your questions, because the PAWS team is really thrilled to share with you all this news. So I'm looking forward to the next set of talks where we can really zoom into some of these efforts in more detail. Thank you, Kustub.
Thank you, Justine, and thank you everyone out there who has painstakingly collected this data, but more importantly, had the faith in sharing it with us. And thank you, Justine, especially for making all that effort to reach out to all these wonderful people and getting the information. As you will see further down in today's agenda, I think when David speaks, this information that you have shared with us will become the foundation of what we can and should do in the next 2 years in the time to come to get closer to our goal of getting a better understanding of snow leopard populations across landscapes, countries, regions, and the entire range. With that, I'd like to now invite Gantulga from Mongolia to give an update. Gantulga is here. Just give me a minute while I set the screen for his presentation. Justine, can you please unmute and be my ears? I don't hear this one, but you'll have to just help me.
Yeah, sure. It hasn't started yet.
Okay, let me know once it starts. Yeah?
No sound yet.
Oh, really? Hold on.
No sound.
Sorry, I'll just get back to the sound again. Hold on. I zoom and it's quirks. Okay, let me know now, please.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about
Perfect.
the nationwide population assessment of snow leopard in Mongolia and its current progress. As you all know, that it's assumed that Mongolia accommodates the second biggest population of snow leopard in the world. IUCN now lists the snow leopard category to vulnerable level, even though we don't have a reliable number of population size and population.
Kustub, no sound. It cut.
What? No sound still?
No sound.
Trend. It may
Yeah.
have a negative impact to snow leopard population in the future by limiting resources and attention. The majority of experts express that the IUCN downlisting decision is not well founded and criticizes it at GSLEP meeting in Bishkek 2017. At the GSLEP meeting in Bishkek, all 20 countries agreed to assess snow leopard population.
Kustub, no sound. Oh.
Population size in their respective countries. There has been several snow leopard distribution mapping and population size assessment in Mongolia. That's why Mongolia is also conducting.
Give me a minute. Let's do one thing. Let's first go to Bhutan and then we'll come back to Mongolia.
Great.
If that's okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, no,
Thank you.
Thanks, Kustub. I'm just glad we don't have breakout rooms today.
Of course.
Kustub, we can't see your screen yet.
It's just coming up, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it should come up now.
Yeah, great, it's working.
Okay.
Hello everyone,
Now?
Kozo Zambo and greetings from Bhutan. My name is Tanjin. I'm a forester working with the Nature Conservation Division under the Department of Forest and Park Services, Royal Government of Bhutan. I would like to present an update on conservation of snow leopards in Bhutan. Before I talk about snow leopards, I would like to briefly touch on nature conservation in Bhutan. Conservation is guided by the country's development philosophy of cross-national happiness, wherein environmental conservation is one of the 4 pillars of cross-national happiness. Bhutan has 71% of its geographic area under forest cover, and our constitution mandates to maintain at least 60% of the area under forest cover for all times to come. We have more than 51% of our area under protected area system, with 5 national parks, 4 wildlife sanctuaries and a strict nature reserve, which are interconnected with functional biological corridors. Bhutan has recorded over 11,200 species of wild flora and fauna till date. Now to talk about snow leopard conservation in Bhutan. Snow leopards are listed under the Schedule 1 of the Forest and Nature Conservation Act of Bhutan 1995. Therefore, killing of a snow leopard is a criminal offense of 4th-degree felony under the Penal Code of Bhutan, and it will lead to a fine of approximately 15,000 US dollars and confiscation of the body parts. Now coming to the snow leopard population and distribution, the nationwide snow leopard survey, which was completed in 2016, estimated 96 snow leopards in Bhutan. Snow leopards are confined to the northern frontier of the country, and more than 90% of the snow leopard habitats fall within the protected areas. With the establishment of the Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program, Bhutan developed the National Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program in 2014, and it was implemented until 2018. So now I would like to talk about the activities implemented under the NSLEP program from 2014 to 2018. Through the NSLEP program, Bhutan initiated snow leopard surveys both at local as well as national level. Jigme Dorji National Park, which is one of the important habitats for snow leopards in Bhutan, initiated camera trapping studies in 2012. They installed camera traps in 40 grids of 4 by 4 kilometers and estimated 15 snow leopard individuals at a density of 6.2 individuals per 100 square kilometers. Snow leopard survey was also conducted in Wangchuk Sentinel National Park, which is the largest national park in Bhutan, located in north central part of Bhutan. They have conducted camera trap surveys in an area of 1,836 square kilometers from the autumn of 2011 to the spring of 2014. Through their survey, they have estimated 15 individuals of snow leopards in their area. As planned in the NSLEP, Bhutan was amongst the first countries to conduct the nationwide snow leopard survey, which was conducted from 2015 to 2016. The survey was conducted using the latest state-of-the-art technology like camera traps, and the data analysis was done using the spatially explicit capture-recapture models. The survey estimated 96 snow leopard individuals in Bhutan at a density of 1.08 animals per 100 square kilometers. The study also estimated more than 43% of the snow leopard habitats to be occupied by snow leopards. Using the data from the nationwide snow leopard survey, we were able to develop distribution map for the principal prey species for snow leopards in Bhutan, the blue sheep. Snow leopards were also detected in the camera traps for the first time in Bomdaling Wildlife Sanctuary, located in eastern part of Bhutan, and Jigme Wangchuk National Park, located in central part of Bhutan, although those areas could not detect the snow leopard during the nationwide snow leopard survey. Bhutan also carried out radiotelemetry studies with the collaring of 2 female snow leopards in Jigme Dorji National Park in 2016. The collars were dropped off at the end of 2018. We do have plans to upscale radiotelemetry studies in future in order to get more insights in the movement and ecology of snow leopards in Bhutan. Considering the importance of protecting the species as well as its habitat, patrolling and law enforcement programs were implemented. Under this, Smart Patrolling program was initiated in the protected areas as well as the forest divisions. Smart was not only used for patrolling and law enforcement, but it was also used for collecting the ecological data as well as other forestry related services. I think everyone would agree with me if I say local communities should be at the center of our conservation programs. In Bhutan, local communities residing in the snow leopard habitats are mostly dependent on livestock herding as well as on natural resources coming out from the snow leopard habitats. Therefore, snow leopards often come in conflict with the local communities, and in order to minimize the human-snow leopard conflict, we initiated community-level snow leopard conservation groups, whereby communities were provided with compensation schemes and other incentives in order to sustain their livelihoods, and they were also trained on monitoring of snow leopards. In order to offset the losses from human snow leopard conflict, we also support the local communities through our agriculture and livestock intensification programs, as well as other livelihood generation programs like ecotourism. We also place great importance to the education and awareness campaigns which we conduct through the annual programs like celebration of International Snow Leopard Day, as well as different festivals which were being celebrated across the different communities residing in the snow leopard habitats. We also provide awareness campaigns to the local communities and schools through different consultative processes by our park officials. Snow leopard conservation program has become one of the key components in the plans and programs both at the national as well as local level. For instance, the 12th Five-Year Plan of Bhutan considers snow leopard conservation as one of the key priorities. Snow leopard conservation is also one of the key components in the conservation management plans of many protected areas which harbors snow leopards as their flagship species. With the National Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program and priorities phasing out, Bhutan developed the first Snow Leopard Conservation Action Plan in 2018 and it will be implemented until 2023. During the development of the Conservation Action Plan, the key threats to the survival of snow leopards were identified and ranked. Some of the threats which ranked high are climate change, collection of cordyceps and non-wood forest produces, and livestock depredation leading to retaliatory killing. Other threats include diseases, feral rocks, degradation of alpine meadows, loss of prey, poaching, and wild prey depletion. Therefore, the way forward for the conservation of snow leopard and its habitat in Bhutan would be mitigating and minimizing the impacts of threats described earlier. This will be achieved through the implementation of the Snow Leopard Conservation Action Plan with the goal to maintain a viable population of snow leopards in Bhutan. The plan has three main targets. The first one is maintaining the stable snow leopard population. Number 2, protection and management of the habitats. And number 3, engagement of local communities. This will be achieved through 8 objectives, 19 outputs, and 52 activities. The plan has an estimated budget outlay of $3.75 million for the 5 years. The key features of the plan include strategies to achieve zero poaching of snow leopards, filling crucial knowledge gaps including climate change responses, prevention and spread of diseases between wildlife and domestic animals, ensuring harmonious coexistence of snow leopard and local communities, monitoring and addressing of climate change impacts, managing habitats and ensuring ecological connectivity, and providing sustainable income generation opportunities to the local communities. Snow leopard population monitoring is one of the key components under the 12th Five-Year Plan of the Royal Government of Bhutan as well as the National Snow Leopard Conservation Action Plan. Therefore, the next nationwide snow leopard population survey will be conducted next year. The survey will be conducted using the PAWS protocol, and currently we are in the preparatory phase with the procurement of equipment and development of survey protocols. We also have plans to monitor and assess the prey population dynamics in the country. Now to touch upon the resources for plan implementation. As we are all aware, no great plan can be successfully implemented if there is no adequate fund. For the implementation of the Snow Leopard Conservation Action Plan, there is a budget outlay from the 12th Five-Year Plan of the Royal Government of Bhutan. However, due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, the core government funding has been greatly impacted. Nevertheless, we do have funding support from the Bhutan for Life project. The next snow leopard survey to be conducted in 2021 will be fully funded by the Bhutan for Life project. The Bhutan for Life project also supports other cross-cutting activities like species protection, habitat improvement, community livelihoods, etc. In addition to the funding from the Royal Government of Bhutan and the Bhutan for Life project, Snow leopard conservation in Bhutan is supported by our conservation partners like Bhutan Trust Fund for Environmental Conservation, Bhutan Foundation, WWF, UNDP, GEF, and the GEF Small Grants Program. We would like to thank all our conservation partners for their valuable support for the conservation of snow leopards. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants for your patience and kind attention. Thank you.
Well, wow, that was, I hope it went pretty well. And yeah, wonderful. Bhutan does inspire all the time. And I think it's wonderful the kind of work that's happening in the country, whether it's sustainable financing, whether it's estimation of biodiversity. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Tandin, for that talk, and really grateful. We might have a few questions for you, so please be around. Thanks so much. Now, okay, let's give it another try. The next presentation by Mongolia. Okay, I share my screen. Close this.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about the nationwide population assessment of snow leopard in Mongolia and its current progress. As you all know, that it's assumed that Mongolia accommodates the second biggest population of snow leopard in the world. The IUCN now lists the snow leopard category to vulnerable, even though we don't have a reliable number of population size and population trend. It may have a negative impact to snow leopard population in the future by limiting resource and attention. The majority of experts express that the IUCN downlisting decision is not well founded and criticizes it at GSLEP meeting in Bishkek 2017. At the GSLEP meeting in Bishkek, all 20 countries agreed to assess snow leopard population size in their respective countries. There has been several snow leopard distribution mapping and population size assessment in Mongolia, but this mapping and assessment is largely based on experts' opinions rather than reliable scientific data. That's why Mongolia is also conducting nationwide population assessment of snow leopard. This assessment is first initiated by WWF Mongolia and started in March 2017. Few months after the Bishkek Declaration established PAWS initiative to coordinate snow leopard population assessment in the world. The Mongolian assessment is a joint effort of many NGOs and organizations. The main partners are the WWF Mongolia and Snow Leopard Conservation Foundation. IRWIS Mongolian Center, National University of Mongolia, Mongolian Academy of Science, and WCS is also partners. Ministry of Environment and Tourism of Mongolia is supporting the assessment for the last 4 years. And Snow Leopard Trust and PAWS initiative is helping with the technical assistance on this assessment. The main donors are the WWF Netherlands, WWF Germany, and WWF US offices. For the nationwide assessment, we are using several different studies. For example, snow leopard movement survey, habitat modeling, science survey, occupancy estimates, also camera trapping surveys, all of which will help us to assess the snow leopard population size in Mongolia. For the nationwide snow leopard population assessment, first we conducted a habitat modeling using 26 locations from 15 colored snow leopards from North, Central, and South Altai Mountains. The habitat modeling could give us some rough idea that where the suitable habitat for snow leopard that snow leopard could be living. But this habitat modeling result is quite biased because all of these 15 individuals is actually called from the best habitats of snow leopard. That's why it cannot really represent all types of habitat that snow leopard could be living. Therefore, we want to have a more robust assessment using occupancy estimates developed by Dr. Daryl McKenzie. For the occupancy estimates, we planned 1,200 grids of each 400 square kilometer sites, covering almost 500,000 square kilometer area of Mongolia. And each grid should receive at minimum of 10 kilometer transects. The fieldwork was conducted between August and November 2018. In total, 12 teams were assembled and 217 personnel are participated in the field work. We managed to sample 1,017 grids and completed almost 20,000 kilometer long transects from all of these grids. And also we tried to sample as even as possible for each grid. And of course, we sampled the areas which are most likely to be used by snow leopards, which is usually the mountainous and rugged areas. In total, we recorded 1,508 signs of snow leopard, of which 1,421 signs are used for the occupancy analysis. We omitted the scuds because we were not sure that all scuds are from snow leopard. But the occupancy analysis, we use 9 site coverage, for example, the available elevation, available ruggedness, forest, and NDY. Also, we used 8 sampling coverage. In total, we ran 26 models and choose the best model based on IC criteria. And we calculated probability of snow leopard occupancy for surveyed 1,017 grids and identified most important cohorts, which are the main ruggedness of available snow leopard habitat, NDVI, and elevation. Of course, all of the cohorts were somehow influenced the occupancy estimates. Then we calculated probability of snow leopard occupancy for entire Mongolia using an influential cohorts. The high probability of being used by snow leopard area were 78,000 kilometers square. The moderately high area were 135,000 kilometers square, and moderately low area were 230,000 kilometers square. Remaining 73% of Mongolian territory were to be used by snow leopard least likely. And then we drafted the snow leopard range map using territorial science during occupancy survey and previous records of snow leopard science during the last 3 years. And we used natural barriers and topography for border drawings. And the result was that snow leopard total range in Mongolia is around 286,000 square kilometers. And confirmed territory by territorial science was 154 square kilometers. But this range map needed reviewing. After completion of the occupancy estimates, it turned out that all the camera trapping surveys we have conducted until 2019 is actually made exclusively in high and moderately high probability areas of being used by snow leopard. If we use these data alone, then we will likely end up having significant bias of 23%, which means we will overestimate the population size of snow leopard in Mongolia. To avoid such bias, we need a balanced sampling sites. Therefore, in 2020, we conducted camera trapping survey on 10 extra mountains in areas with low and medium probability of being used by snow leopard with the partner organization, Snow Leopard Conservation Foundation. Currently, all this camera trapping field work is completed and data is being analyzed. In overall, the 37 mountains are surveyed by camera trapping survey, and currently 22 mountains are finalized and 60 mountain data is being analyzed. These mountains will cover 26% of entire snow leopard range in Mongolia. And after this analysis, finally we will be able to say how many snow leopards are in Mongolia by early 2021. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks, Kantulga. Kustu bit finished.
Give me a second, sorry. It's a bit of a few hoops I have to jump through. All right. Let me see. I think we're good. All right. So yeah, again, just let this sink in. 500,000 square kilometers of landscapes surveyed in surveyed in less than a year, if I'm not mistaken. Spectacular work, and I think the team from Mongolia, led by led by the government, but supported by WWF, Snow Leopard Conservation Foundation, WCS, and all these various organizations. I think they've really done incredible work. Thank you very much once again, Kantulga, for sharing some of the amazing data and beautifully done maps. I think the next speaker would be Manvi Sharma. Dr. Manvi Sharma, she works with the Nature Conservation Foundation in India, and she'll be giving us a quick update about the work that's going on in one of the provinces of India to deliver to PAWS. Manvi, over to you, please.
Thanks, Kaustuv. I'll just share my screen. Give me a second. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just loading. Yeah. My name is Manvi, and I'll be telling you about the PAWS work that's been happening in India. And that's a partnership between NCF, the Himachal Pradesh Forest Department, and the Snow Leopard Trust. So as you all know, the snow leopard distribution range is about 1.8 million square kilometers, and India has the third largest share in that range. And the Hemispiti landscape is one of the 20 GSLEP landscapes that's been identified for the PAWS work. And the Indian state of Himachal Pradesh forms a large part of that landscape. So in 2018, there was a partnership formed between NCF and the Himachal Pradesh Forest Department to conduct a statewide assessment of populations of snow leopards and its prey. The work that I'm going to present is an update of this work. So early last year in the GSLEP meeting, the government of India also released the methodology for conducting these surveys. These are adapted from the PAWS guidelines, and we've been using these methodology to design our study. So we followed the two-step approach of first conducting occupancy surveys, where we use this information to divide the landscape into different strata, and then within each strata we used information at the macro and the micro level sampling to select sites for conducting our camera trapping work. So the first step, the occupancy survey, showed in the southern part here in east, a high occupancy of snow leopards. And up north, there was a low occupancy region. This information was used to stratify the habitat. And the third habitat was where the information on occupancy wasn't available, but it was potential snow leopard habitat. So using this information, we stratified the habitat. The high occupancy region was about 12,700 square kilometers. The low occupancy region was about 8,000 square kilometers, and the unknown occupancy area was about 5,000 square kilometers. So we did representative sampling from all of these different strata, where we had a total of 10 sites where we conducted camera trapping work, which is now concluded. And we have 5 sites from the high stratum, 3 sites from the low stratum, and 2 sites, camera trapping sites from the unknown stratum. So the camera trapping work involves deployment, monitoring, and retrieval that spans over 60 days. And typically a team of 6 to 8 researchers go and install these cameras in some of the very difficult landscapes in which snow leopards are found. We also took the help of the forest department to inform the community about our work that we were doing in these landscapes. So the entire effort involved 10 sites, which spanned over more than 24,000 square kilometers. And the data that we have was spanning over 20,000 camera trapping nights, which led to more than about 50,000 animal photographs that we had to process and tag. So this table summarizes the effort from all the 10 sites. And this work was concluded last year. We had from up to 25 to 35 cameras that were installed at each site at a time. So the workflow that we designed for our project involved treating the images as the raw data. So all the information were stored on the images. And this was mainly done using image manipulation software, and we used Digicam for that. And we used at least 2 to 3 patches of these rosette patterns to tell one snow leopard from another. And our team also used the training app that's available for practicing before starting the process of image tagging. And we're mindful of this recent study that showed that even experts could make errors of up to 12% that could lead to about 30% inflation in our estimates of abundance. And keeping that in mind, we followed, I just want to spend a little bit time here to show the effort that we put in image identification. So we did that in 2 phases. In the first phase, 1 or 2 researchers carefully cataloged all the camera trap images using the rosette patterns on the face, the flanks, the rump, shoulders, the tail, and the head. And the second phase was the review phase, where we especially double-checked all the individuals that were captured only once. And amongst these individuals, if we didn't have enough evidence, by which I mean that images which were not comparable, for example, left flank with left flank, those photographs were then either reassigned a different as unidentifiable. If there was a disagreement between the review phase and the identification phase, a third reviewer, erring on the side of caution, took the final call between to resolve these images. And some of this work we did in the middle of the pandemic. So we worked remotely and we diligently took notes to do our image tagging and processing work. So since we used a design-based approach, to estimate densities from very different kinds of strata, we used multi-session models, multi-session SCCR models to estimate density and abundance. And we also used simpler models to do model comparisons. And given the thorough sampling and our studies design, the difference in estimates between these models was negligible. Apart from that, we also used simulations to quantify the errors that might still arise due to our image identification process. And we also used another simulation-based approach to drop a site at a time to understand the contribution of that site towards all these parameters in the model, the lambda, sigma, and the density. So this the simulation work is still we're working on it. Along with the snow leopard population assessment work, we also did prey assessments in parallel, where we used double observer surveys to conduct these surveys for all the 10 sites spanning across these 3 strata in the snow leopard habitat. And from these surveys, we found that sites that had high densities of prey were the sites that also had high occupancy of snow leopards. And the 2 prey that the data I'm showing here is for blue sheep and ibex. We've also benefited tremendously from these camera trap data through these other projects that the researchers have done in our team. For example, a PhD student is working on carnivore community structuring that co-occur in these snow leopard habitats. So Janice Patel is building these multi-species occupancy models to understand co-occurrence patterns between foxes and stone martens in the presence and absence of snow leopards. Then we also have a rich capture of these beautiful pheasants in the Himalayan region. And another student is building distribution maps of these birds, for which we have very little information from other parts of the world. A third project was a behavioral study on activity patterns of stone martens. This was done by another student, Roy. He was interested in looking at activity patterns of stone martens when compared to the prey base and also the predators. This work came out in 2018. And lastly, apart from all these main PAWS efforts, we have also engaged with the Forest Department for capacity building. We have conducted camera trapping workshops for the frontline staff for several forest divisions in Himachal Pradesh. And this is also to build a long-term relationship and partnership with the Forest Department. And as Justine was saying, PAWS is more than just a number. It is about collaborating and building partnerships. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so very much, Manvi. That was really nice. And the way what you've not only explained the way you went with the analysis, but also went a step further to showcase what all we can do with this goldmine of data that we're generating with camera traps. Yes, your primary interest is snow leopards, but you can do so much work with other predators, other species, and address other questions which are often not even looked at. Thank you very much. That was a really nicely put together update. Okay, so we're actually done with this session. I'm still hoping there'll be one more session left. So okay, so that's it for now. The next would actually be me. Well, okay.
No, we have questions, Kaustubh.
Of course, yeah. So yes, before you tolerate me, please. These have been 3 very useful presentations, and they were so informative in so many different ways. Thank you one more time to all the presenters. But if you have any questions, please do let us know, so we can take those questions straight to the presenters or the experts who are here with us as well.
I have a question. Can I just ask, or?
Yes, please.
Okay. So it seems like in many efforts there is an interest in the community in general, right? The carnivore community, other carnivores or other species. So I was just curious. The PAWS is about snow leopards. So I was just curious about how something like that would grow, or is it something which kind of happens on the side, or is there interest in maybe expanding to larger community? By community, I mean species, not human.
So I'll take a first go, and then of course Justine, Ranjani, and others, please feel free to join in. So there's nothing which is stopping us, and as I mentioned, this is such a valuable data set which is being generated. I think the only bottleneck, if I may say so, is the time. If there are students, if there are people, if there are personnel available to take care of some of the work, like Manvi just showed, there are 2 different students who are doing similar stuff. That's spectacular, and that's something we should really aim for, which is one reason why all this data, I think, will stay with us. Will stay with the organizations and countries who are doing the work, and will keep on getting recycled, reused for various community level analysis and works for sure. By the way, when I speak, I'll mention a little bit about how AI might be able to come in as a possible assistance when we start looking at those aspects as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but definitely, I don't see a reason why it shouldn't be done, apart from, of course, our limitations in manpower. Justine, would you like to add something to that, please?
Yeah, sure. And I think maybe Manvi's example, and maybe Manvi, we can ask you as well, like their team has really planned it from the beginning. I think, Uma, they saw this as an opportunity to include a number of students to look at the smaller carnivores, to also look at the prey and see it. So like some of the people mentioning yesterday, I think some of the teams are using this as an opportunity to do these further studies, but sometimes it's, as we explained, it's more difficult. We don't have enough capacity to do everything. But we would like to potentially have different working groups that could develop some of these themes. For example, the complementary surveys on prey, and we might need to prioritize though, because there are so many things that we could look at. There could be prey, there could be threats, there could be other small carnivores. And in terms of more structured in the PAWS effort, perhaps we could have a conversation. What are our priorities? And then have working groups working towards those priorities. And then I think we could have more than snow leopard as a number, and it would be really interesting to do that. So
it's just that it's such a huge effort to even start, any field work in such a location. And even I know you say you have limited capacity, but the capacity you have is tremendous in some sense, right? And so in that sense, it could be added value in a sense if it's really, that's amazing though to see the extent of the work. Thanks.
Thank you, Uma. Thank you. And I think we should definitely make that, include that in the proceedings, that, explore what else we can do with this data set that's going to be generated, and not just leave it to if and when, but make it a part of the plan. I think that's a very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, I know I'm talking too much, but, globally, it seems like we are moving less and less. I mean, moving further and further away from field surveys, like boots on the ground type of work. And I just see that as a trend. And so I think that capitalizing on this very deep field experience is really a wonderful opportunity.
Totally. Thank you. Thank you very much, Uma. That's a very, very valuable point, and we should definitely include that in the proceedings. Any other question, any other comment, suggestion? Please do let us know. Yep, I'm sure you don't want to get tired of just hearing a handful of us. Aishwarya, why don't you come on, switch on your mic and ask the question, please? Or are you giving an answer there? Aishwarya, I see you've just put a comment.
I think her question is about other sites, other locations.
Right. Yes, and that's something that even Justine's presentation did highlight about. Definitely, I think that the key is to move to other sites as well. Great.
Yeah, Manvi, maybe you can share, how were these lower density sites even selected for your team? And how to broaden and the unknown sites? Just to give an idea.
So it was based on geography. So it was on the sides of the river, both banks of the river, at the micro level. But it was interesting to find that we got detections even from areas where we thought that we might not have snow leopards. So it was in some ways we detected a new location where we initially thought there might not be snow leopard presence. Yeah.
Thanks. And Kustub, maybe we can add, I don't know if Gantuga has updates from these low density areas in Mongolia, because I know the Snow Leopard Conservation Foundation just has finished one of the surveys from these less suitable habitat, and they've actually come back from one area with no snow leopards were actually captured. But it is a less occupied area in terms of occupancy estimate, and previous camera traps have indicated snow leopards use the area or have been there, but no photos in the 3 months across over 1,000 kilometers squared. So that just shows some of these low areas might even only be used periodically by snow leopards. But I don't know if Gantuga, you want to add to that.
So from WW Mongolia's data, there's two low density probability areas that we surveyed this year has no record of snow leopards. But previously there was a recording of the snow leopards, but seems like it's not a territorial habitat. So it may be just some wandering snow leopards sometimes exist there. And there's one area in the very north of Mongolia, along the Russian border. There's two snow leopards recorded, but these two are recorded quite far from each other. And in between these two individuals, there is no record of snow leopards so far. So it's categorized as a moderate probability of snow leopard. For other sites, we are still checking the pictures, so we have no new updates so far.
Thank you, Gantuga. In fact, that reminds me to what our group on data analysis was discussing yesterday. And David Borchers, he made a very good point that it's a good problem to have if you are sampling an area and if you sample an area and you end up with no encounters. Yes, it's a lot of effort and hard work, but it's a good kind of a problem in the larger scheme of things. So there's a question by Joanna for Manvi. Manvi, why don't you come switch on your mic and please answer that for everyone. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks,
so
Joanna.
The question is, if I may repeat, could Manvi elaborate on what type of area they found unexpected snow leopard presence where?
Yeah, so these were the northern bits, and the expectation was based on our occupancy surveys. And these were very high elevation areas, towards the other extreme of the snow leopard, typical snow leopard elevation range. So these were, based on that.
Costa, I have
Thank
a
you.
question.
Sir, please go ahead.
Is anybody has done any surveys or occupancies data you have where there is no livestock with snow leopard presence?
Justine, you might want to answer that from parts of China, I think.
I was actually going to say from Snow Leopard Conservation Foundation in Mongolia, actually, in the great strictly protected Great Gobi. That's an area where people don't live in that area. And there are no, Gantulka can maybe add to this, but there's not meant to be any livestock because people don't live in that area. But there was very little prey. There was some ibex and argali, but very little that they observed. They haven't done proper surveys yet, but that area apparently has no livestock.
Yeah, there's also the same situation in very north of Mongolia, in Kursul. It's a protected area and there's no one lives there, no livestock. Also the prey species, the ibex and other ungulates the abundance is really low there.
I lost him. Can you explain it to me a bit, Costa? What did he say? I lost him.
So what he basically also confirmed that in other parts of Mongolia where they have no livestock, they're also very low in ibex and other snow leopard prey. And at least these 2-3 sites that we've just mentioned about from Mongolia, they're among the low or no snow leopard encounter sites. So no snow leopards have been encountered in these sites so far.
And can I have another
Yes, please.
question? Or
of course. No, please go ahead.
I don't want anybody else is taking time out. So
please go ahead.
So yeah, and then are there any areas we have done studies where we have looked at the abundance of livestock and the prey abundance, natural prey abundance and relationship?
So again, Justine, why don't you go with this one, especially about the South Gobi to start with, and then Manvi, you should be able to talk about some sites in India, I think.
Yeah, sure. And I think we also have Sandro here, and Sandro team actually has been specifically looking at this question, Raghu. I don't know if you've been in touch with Sandro, but in terms of carnivores in general, but they're also looking at it in snow leopard relation, which is a really interesting question. But we are looking in the South Gobi since 2013, surveying snow leopards, also ungulates with double observers like Manvi shared. So we have long-term data on ungulates, on snow leopards, and we have an understanding based on government data on livestock. However, our full understanding on total number of livestock is not, we're not surveying to understand exactly. But then we have a few research students that has looked at this relationship as well. I don't know if that answers.
No, I was looking at the relationship, and then is there any trend that if you have low prey stock, you have a higher prey, wild prey, or vice versa?
Yeah. So there's another very interesting manuscript which is in review right now, but its preprint is available on bioRxiv. I'll be happy to share that shortly. It's by Rishi Sharma and the team, which looked at prey abundance, livestock abundance of 2 sizes, like a large livestock, small livestock, large wild prey, small wild prey. So he did have that data set and was able to compare some of those. So I'll be happy to share that preprint with you shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question by Claudio. Claudio, why don't you come switch on your mic, please, unless you're struggling with low bandwidth. Claudio, I think you're...
Yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead, please. Yes, we do. Thank you.
No, it was not a question. Just in December 2008, in February 2019, I did a survey with the National University, some member from a National University of Mongolia. And actually, there is some livestock in the Great Gobi, because the soldiers living in the custom there have their own livestock. Plus, there is a few families anyway living there with the livestock. And then actually there is a footage of a snow leopard eating some goats there in that area in the Great Gobi. Anyway, from the survey, the occurrence of livestock was quite rare, but still occur even small. It's just to be precise on that. That's it. Okay. Bye.
Great, thank you. Joanna has a question, and I don't have the answer, but if someone has the answer, or let's talk about it. She's asking, why are populations of wild prey low in these areas?
Mambi, do you have an answer from India? Based on your data, or any thoughts? Who's your team?
So these are predominantly bottom-up systems. So competition might be one reason that might be driving population dynamics. I don't think it's due to snow leopard presence. So it's one thought to follow would be to look at the competition from other livestock and also habitat covariates, but I don't know the answer. Yeah.
There we go, Zalmay. That's a good point, Zalmay, that overall these areas could be generally low in productivity, which is why probably even livestock is not going there, or people with livestock are not going there. So who knows if that could be the reason. Thank you, Zalmay. Yes,
sorry.
Please. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This was actually in relation to the earlier comment about the areas where there was no livestock. So if there's no livestock, then one would expect a higher wild prey as a general statement. So I was just wondering why there was so little wild prey if there's no livestock. So the answer
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, which is what Zalmay has suggested, a possibility that generally it could be a low productivity area. Yeah,
so then why would it be protected? Why choose that area to protect if it's a low productivity area?
So one of the areas that Justine mentioned about, which is the Great Gobi A, it's protected for the Gobi bear. Snow leopard is almost like an add-on species, which may or may not use that one. I think that's one of the factors. But there are several sites within the known or the supposed snow leopard distribution range where we don't even know, or they could be very low or no snow leopards at all. And I think one of the key of these the entire sampling in large scales is to be able to identify those areas and get a much better understanding than what we already have. So as Justine mentioned, in some of these areas, the snow leopard occupancy is also very, very low. It's the probability of a snow leopard using these areas in some cases is less than 25%, which is could be as good as non-existent in some cases. So yeah, that's the level of information we have as of now. But these are definitely very important questions that we must explore and try to answer, because there's a lot of this intricate relationship between livestock and wild prey, which is spoken of, and I think, and I must admit, we know little about those relationships.
Kostav, the thing, can I come in?
Yes, please.
See, when we look at sheep and goat, we pool them together as one entity. as a domestic livestock. But the goats are different, sheep are different, their grazing patterns is different. They're herded together, but they're different. Sheep are grazer, the goats are browsers. So the sheep may not be, such intense competition with maybe ibex and blue sheep because their grazing ways are different. So their selection may be different. They may be using the same areas, but maybe different. So if you look at it, then you have to separate that out in a way. How many goats are there? So usually in this area, goats are very small proportion. So in terms of what and Rumbak, when I looked at it, there maybe about 20% of the live and sick sheep population is goat. So always I had a question in my mind was whether this goat and sheep was a limiting factor for the wild population or not. I don't have the answer, but that was a question I always had because of this grazing way of doing it. And we have not, in our studies later on, I moved on to tiger and all, but we have completely ignored the fact that the goat is different, the sheep is different. So there may be sheep population, if there are more, then maybe like Argalis and all, you can see competition and impact, but not goat. Just, this is a question I had in my head. We don't have an answer. We need to look at that also.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who intervened and added comments as well. Thank you, Shivang. Does make sense that it's not always low livestock, which is equal to high prey density, and totally agree with you. Great. So do we have any more questions? Or I think we have 5 more minutes, Justine, right? Till we go to the next session. So we can take one of those virtual coffee breaks or something if need be, or we can continue in a couple of minutes. I think either way is fine.
Sandro is writing to me in the chat, but I wish he would share with the wider group some of these thoughts. Sandro, can you please share?
Can you hear me?
We hear you well, Sandro.
Okay, good. Because I'm not very familiar with electronic stuff, so I'm always afraid of pushing the wrong button. No, I'm not sure that I really can add very much to the discussion. When Justin mentioned my past work, actually I have been working in areas where livestock was not so common. So snow leopards were mainly living out of wild prey, be it Himalayan tahr or ibex or something like that. I mean, also our recent review we published in my review did not really deal with density of predators and prey, but just with number of species. What is very stimulating as to the snow leopard, it is the fact that it seems to be very much of a specialist. I mean, even if the number of potential prey grow, they seem to concentrate on just a very few, 1 or 2 main prey. And I think this is something which should be explored in more study areas, not so much through data coming from a review, because we all know the great limitations which reviews have. But working in the field, I mean, collecting relevant data. Because of course the next question will be why, in absence of competing predators, the snow leopard may select, I don't use this verb lightly, may select only 1 or 2 prey. I mean, it's an open question. Maybe the question is wrong, but it would be nice to know why it is wrong, because the present data do suggest that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandro. Thank you for that insight.
Sandro is there. it's rare opportunity for me to talk to him. Maybe he can. I have another questions in my head which I want to know. Hi, Sandro. It's lovely to talk to
Hello.
you. It's maybe after maybe 30 years we're speaking to each other.
Do you mean to say that I am an old person?
Oh, or I am. We're both in the same boat. But you know, Sandra, what really excites me, the snow leopard is such a different, a unique pantherized species. If you look at the prey, it selects, like you say, as wild prey, are twice the size or much larger than the snow leopard. And if you look at the optimal foraging theory, it doesn't just justify its prey selection in an evolutionary way. How can we explain that its main prey is twice? Some of the males could be twice as big, females are larger on average, and is still managed to survive. How we explain that?
Well, I'm not sure this statement is true, because baral are a smallish animal. Even a large male doesn't go beyond 45 kilograms, 40 kilograms. So yes, might be a little bit larger than a snow leopard, but not so much. So much more. And also when they prey on Himalayan tar, where males can be as big as you know very well, 120, 130 kilograms. Sometimes in New Zealand, it seems they can get up to 140 kilograms. But they seem to prey preferably on kids, juveniles. Although every now and again they can kill also large males. And again, in an older review I published in 2013, it came out that the snow leopard actually tends to prey on that range of prey. I mean, hardly ever before, hardly ever bigger than, heavier than some 40 to 50 kilograms. Of course, they are perfectly able to kill a 150 or 200 kilograms animal, such like a domestic yak or so. But they don't do it as often as they do with smaller prey. So, well, like all large cats, they can kill much larger prey than their size, but usually they prefer not to do it. I'm a bit surprised. Why do you say that the snow leopard tend to prey on larger prey than its body size? I mean, I'm not sure whether this discussion is really fitting the topic of the meeting, but well, if you have a quick answer.
Can I, or I'm taking too much
Sure,
time?
Sir. Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, if you could answer it quickly, then we can, I'd love to take this conversation elsewhere after this meeting. But for now, if you could just give a quick answer, sir, before we move on.
So if the main prey, if you look at the overall, the global range of snow leopard, would be three main species: blue sheep, ibex, and argali, and to some areas very smaller ranges is the Himalayan thar. And so I was looking at why the ranges are long, why the densities are. So if you look at blue sheep in our most of the areas, the blue sheep males could be about 80, 90 kilos. And if you look at the for my understanding of the data which I've said, even the average size is about 45, 50. Ibex is much larger, but they can kill. They are killing it. But what my point is that they, even within the blue sheep or ibex population, which is a larger body size, they're trying to target the smaller, as Sandro says, and which is true. because you hardly see during the 6 years I may have seen only 2 kills of male blue sheep, but mainly female or the smaller ones. And that is why I'm saying the densities of snow leopards are much lower even though you have in these natural equilibrium. But the livestock can play a very significant role in terms of the response of snow leopard as a numerical response is abundance of snow leopard. So we shouldn't, the point I was trying to make is that we shouldn't always see very negatively about the livestock there, unless there is disease and other aspect of it, because it can be complementary in terms of the what abundance we have.
You're muted, Kustu.
Sorry, yeah, I unmuted and muted again. Yeah, no, thank you, sir. That really very nicely summarizes and brings us back to the core issue we are talking about, is the relationship of snow leopard density with various covariates that we can hypothesize could have an effect or not. Great. So with that, thank you one more time to everyone for for these invigorating discussions. Very exciting, very good to see. On the sides, Justine and Ranjini have been messaging. This looks like the great, PAWS is also becoming a science hub to discuss science around snow leopards. And if you ask, our heart sinks when we see that happening. So thank you very much for these discussions. I think we should definitely continue some of these discussions on the sides, and we will let you know a few modalities. We are also considering the possibility of creating something like a Slack channel where we can have some of these discussions among a larger team of people over here. Okay, so with that, I'd like to now take over. And Justin, is that me, right? That's surely me to speak now. Yes. Okay, so I'll quickly talk very briefly about the wider benefits and tools of PAWS. And after me, we'll have Professor David Borchers, who'll throw light on where PAWS heads after 2020. Give me a minute. I have my screen. Okay, so you can see my screen? Justine, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Great. 1 second, please. Right, so again, thank you one more time for the exciting discussions that we just had. And I cannot overemphasize the value of these conversations. And I think between us, our entire team will have a lot of material to put together in the proceedings of this little summit that you all have kindly agreed to join us in. So very quickly, I'm just going to give a broad overview of the additional benefits of PAWS. And I should actually have a slide added to this, which must mention how it can become a hub of conversation about science pertaining to snow leopards. So as you all would have noticed by now, the PAWS process, and we saw with Bhutan, we saw with Mongolia, we saw an example from India, we have had lots of discussions yesterday. So the PAWS process is not a linear one. Instead, it's a modular process. There are different elements that can be invoked or used depending on what our landscape or country-specific situation analysis indicates. So apart from the expected outcomes of solid science and statistical development, the PAWS process has additional benefits that I'd like to just quickly highlight here. And this we mention in the light of an occasional criticism of the entire effort, where people say that, oh, why are you investing so much of time and energy in counting snow leopards? Why not invest this money or this human power in resources to do more conservation activities on the ground. To those comments, we feel some of these next few points could be valuable. So to begin with, PAWS will not only give us reliable, replicable numbers of snow leopards from the whole snow leopard range, but will also give us numbers from study areas, landscapes, provinces, countries, and so on. And there's much more to this effort, as we will hopefully see. So to begin with, the process has helped us crystallize ecologically reasonable and statistically robust methods for assessment of species distribution and abundance in these high altitude areas, in the mountainous areas of Asia. And I'm very proud to state that with inputs from nearly 25 statisticians and ecologists, we were able to bring out the PAWS guidelines that caters to a wide range of audience, from technical teams to senior government officials interested in pursuing PAWS compliant surveys or any surveys to estimate distribution or abundance of snow leopards or even other species. We've also worked very closely with several countries to jointly develop country-specific manuals and protocols. Now, for example, here you can see two such protocols. The protocols developed so far in English and Russian are likely to serve the snow leopard research and conservation for years to come. And these get customized and attenuated to the local requirements and expected plans. Now, since PAWS process is not linear, as I just mentioned, our team of experts and collaborators has very generously invested the time and effort to put together several modular manuals to provide very specific guidance and advice on different elements of the PAWS process. Broadly, distribution surveys, analysis, field data collection, processing of data, workflows of data management, and so on. And all of these guidelines are available and will be made, those which are not available already will be made available on the GSLEP website. Now, the entire exercise, among other benefits, is also helping us develop a refined distribution map of snow leopards. As you just saw, the monumental effort in Mongolia, what it has done is it has helped us generate snow leopard distribution map addressing imperfect detection that are a considerable improvement over all previous distribution maps that we knew about the species. Those comparative maps that you see on the right-hand side, they show how the current map or the currently developed map, assuming imperfect detection, fare over previous distribution maps, which were either using expert opinion or even some of those presence-only analytical methods. And that's something which will be of great value as we move to other sites. We will also be able to map threats as part of the PAWS process as we collect data from a large cross-section of the snow leopard range. We will be able to map threats across the range like never before, thus providing us with a spatio-temporal map of threats, temporal as we do it over time, but at least for now, a spatial map of threats to biodiversity that can then in turn help conservation prioritization and planning, not just for conservation organizations, but governments as well. This is one of my favorite slides, and we've discussed this at length already, but the capacity building, capacity development aspect of PAWS for young conservationists and frontline cannot be overstated. We are looking at the future with trained and qualified researchers and data and analysts who will be able to contribute to wildlife research, conservation, and monitoring across the snow leopard range countries. Some of you might already know, we have already collaborated with the Snow Leopard Network to develop and deliver training and capacity building programs for various aspects of that include PAWS, but also extend to other conservation issues as well. But the most incredible part of these training programs for me personally is that they are fully replicable with not just video recordings of lectures and workshops, but also resource material and codes and workflows remain available for the participants online. And lastly, with better distribution maps, when they are juxtaposed with topographical maps, we hope they might be able to provide us with an unprecedented level of knowledge about where wildlife may move in an uncertain future when human response, diseases, and changes in vegetation composition due to climate change can potentially influence the fate of species such as the snow leopard. Lastly, the entire PAWS process is galvanizing development in science and technology, including but not limited to fields such as statistical ecology and artificial intelligence. I'll take a minute now to showcase some of the recently developed and under development tools which are at your service. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, some of these modular manuals have been created to support fieldwork, lab processes, and these are not going to be limited. Their usability is not going to be limited to just the snow leopard researchers, but they have the generality to be able to be used across other species as well. Again, our team of wonderful collaborators, this time from the University of St. Andrews, they have been able to create some workflows, or as they call in the stats world, as cheat sheets. Not just that, they've also been able to create some web browser-based software that can be used irrespective of which operating system you're using to first figure out in a large landscape, where should you sample next? So if you recollect what Gantulga showed a few minutes ago and what Justine mentioned about the potential biases, how do we take that bias out if we know a certain area of interest? Where do we sample? How do we sample? And this macro design is a fantastic tool to assist with that. Today, a paper has just gotten published and in Methods of Ecology and Evolution. And what it provides, along with 3 other papers by our collaborators, Ian Durbach, David Bortres, Chris Sutherland, and Ali Nawaz and the entire team. But what it does is it provides us with some tools to decide where to go and set up cameras. And it's never the case that you have an unlimited supply of cameras. It's never the case that you have an unlimited amount of time to set up these cameras. So with limited resources and time, how do you set up cameras in a certain landscape? And some of these tools are exceptionally valuable in providing assistance. I wouldn't say they tell you exactly go and do this, but they provide you a much better guidance to where you would like to go and set up your cameras within a certain perimeter around those locations. So these are the fast, flexible alternatives to regular grid designs for spatial capture recapture. These are now available. And some of the new developments will soon be made available to people who are interested. Catering to the key discussion point yesterday about the data analysis in the data analysis segment, you can also find neat cheat sheets or guides, in other words, to set up and analyze data in the spatial capture recapture framework, whether it's setting up your data or analyzing it with spatial capture recapture methods. These tools are now available on the GSLEP website. Manvi mentioned this earlier, and there was a paper which came up which indicated that there could be that even small fraction of misidentification can inflate population estimates. Now, even though that paper used conventional capture recapture, which uses a different framework than spatial capture recapture, it's a problem that needs to be dealt with. And we have this very easy to use and even actually fun tool, which we often take to schools and let children do this as well, where you can not only train yourself, but also do a self-assessment of how good you are at identifying snow leopards as individuals. You all will appreciate, and I think this is where I'll go back to Uma's point, that we are already peaking in terms of human and computational abilities to deal with massive data sets. Yes, it's a great idea to be able to extract images of other species. And yes, we should plan it in advance. But then there are times we are constrained by resources or manpower. And that's where we have turned to some of the technological giants, such as Microsoft in this case, who have developed an AI-based application which is ready to be deployed to filter animals of interest from a large number of camera trap pictures. It's already working for snow leopards. We just need to add a few images of other species for it to be able to start recognizing other species as well. The process is so simple. You just upload your files or folders and on a cloud platform, and then just wait in a few hours. You will have your data analyzed, and it would give you a database of images classified as species. And as recently as about 2 weeks ago, both Justine and we saw a remarkable development where a team of young entrepreneurs who we are collaborating with, they successfully identified more than 95% of the snow leopard pictures that we provided them as unknown individuals. It's a great start. Of course, there are there are certain developments that are yet to be made, but the expected cost of using a remote server to run these massive AI algorithms and this application are surprisingly negligibly low. But the app, as I mentioned, the app still needs some development that may even require some funding to make it comply with the data management workflows that we see with the snow leopard or any other wildlife camera trapping. So while we are working with those teams as we speak, we hope these tools will become available very soon. And if you haven't already, you must watch David Borcher's presentation yesterday evening. The recording is available on the platform, on the virtual platform, where he's giving a hint about where from identifying individuals, the next evolution in statistical ecology is going to be using similarities than individual IDs. And it's a fascinating development to be able to follow of where we are headed to literally automate much of the work that we are planning to do. We had some discussions yesterday about the development of snow leopard genome to be able to conduct a relatively more objective analysis of individual IDs based on fecal matter. There is a multi-organizational consortium right now which has been set up with the help of GSLEP program to boost this work further. I just have some very exciting updates here. The idea is that through single nucleotide polymorphism panels, our genetics gurus have suggested that it will not only be able to, we will not only be able to use fecal samples for census, but also range estimates, and that too with much greater certainty, and probably cost-wise, it'll be a fraction of what it costs right now. Uma, if I've said something wrong, I'll give you the floor to please correct me if I'm wrong here. But on the other hand, there are a substantial number of blood samples that are being used for its development. But if any of you have access to any blood or tissue, please let us know, as it will allow us to it will allow the genetics team to improve the quality of the panel. But not just that, you will be able to contribute to this development and also be a part of a possible high impact publication coming out of this. Lastly, I would like to reintroduce you to the wonderful team of experts who have agreed to be part of the PAWS process. And they're all giving their time voluntarily, and we cannot be thankful enough to them. Basically, take a pick from the list above, and we at the GSLEP program can put you in touch with the expertise that you may need to take your study from the step of asking questions to designing, conducting studies, collecting data, analyzing data, reporting results, running statistical analysis or whatever. All of this is available through the GSLEP program at no expectation in return. So whether it is boot camps or training programs, I think please make use of it. And this is a graphical depiction of what I mentioned very briefly yesterday. We really want us to get to the right end of this curve, and each of you should feel empowered to reach out to us so we can connect you to the right level, to the experts, whether through training programs or boot camps or other collaborations that you may consider necessary or possible. So that's it. The PAWS initiative, as you know, it requires thorough coordination and participation at multiple levels. And Justine's presentation was a classic example of how data collected by so many different individuals, countries, organizations, and researchers has come together, and it's looking very exciting already. It's not something, but please note that PAWS cannot be achieved by a single organization or agency, which is why we repeatedly state that it's not an organization or a country's effort, but a collaborative program where we can come together and build a better understanding of snow leopard populations across its range or within parts of its range. With that, I'd like to stop. Justine, over to you.
Thank you, Kostub, for the great presentation and sharing these recent updates. I see a few people in the chat already wanting some of the URLs. So many of these will be available on the GSLEP website. We have a PAWS section. Some of the are coming and will be soon available there. But if you see you can't find anything on the website, do email us, and of course we'll make sure it's readily available. And with that, without any ado, we have David Butchers, which is the chair of our PAWS technical committee, who is here to share a little bit about, okay, we've come this far, but what is potentially can be the plan? I'm sorry about the background. But what could be the plan post 2020 in the next 3 years? And how PAWS can be achievable? So I think David will explain to us more on how we can make it actually happen. So without any ado, I think it would be great.
So Justine, David's suggesting he's just going to leave and rejoin in a minute. He has a bit of a connectivity issue. But in the meanwhile, if you have any other questions, please let us know. I've just put on the chat window the link to the website of the Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Program. It's very simple. It's globalsnowleopard.org. Once you get to the website, you will see there are 2 segments. One of them is Capacities Center, or the other one is called Resource Center. You'll find most of the material you're looking for right there. David, you're here? Give me a minute.
I'm back. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Good. Just as I tried to sign on, then my computer said your microphone is not connected. Sorry about that. Okay. So I'll just share my screen.
Should be able to now.
I've been asked to. Maybe just bear with me. This one.
Yeah, we see it now.
Okay, 1 second.
Yes.
And can you see that, or have I got the videos in the corner? Okay, there we go. Okay, so I was asked just to give my thoughts on, now that we're sort of halfway through PAWS, on what happens next. And so I've just got together a few slides with my thoughts, and please interrupt me whenever you like to ask questions or make comments, and I'm sure we'll have time for questions afterwards. So the first thing to say is that an enormous amount has been achieved already, and you've been shown this map earlier, from which you can see the huge amount of survey effort that has already happened under PAWS and some survey effort that's planned. So we've got a fantastic start. And I thought then, if we're answering the question, what happens next, I thought I should step back and look at what the original objectives were. And so these are just bullet points from those original objectives. The first bullet point there, produce robust estimates of population status within the next 5 years. That's from the original GSLEP statement. The other two bullet points people have spoken about a fair bit. So establish best practices and protocols for data collection and management for population assessment. And the talks this morning, you've heard something about that. And capacity building, you've also heard a fair bit about that from Justine and from Kostov. But then interpreting this population status more narrowly or specifically, what I'm going to look at is what do we need to do next to produce robust estimates of specifically abundance and distribution by the end of this PAWS period. And so looking at this sort of very generically as a statistician, how do you get robust estimates of abundance across some whole range? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to define the range. So where the snow leopards can be found. And you've already heard talks this morning about ways that that's done, and occupancy surveys are extremely useful there. And some of the talks this morning give really good examples of how to do this. And then also in some of the talks this morning, people spoke about stratifying, which is the next step. So once you've decided what the area is within which you want to estimate the abundance, you typically can't estimate the abundance in one shot, and typically you'll have huge variation in density across that area. So the next step is to cut that range into subregions, which are called strata, and there are various motivations for cutting it. You might want to cut it by country, for example, because you might want estimates within each country. So that's not really a statistical reason to cut, but it's a reason to cut because of the form you want your final estimates in. Then you might cut it by habitat or expected density, and the statistical reasons for doing that is that in different habitats and you would expect different densities. And if you estimate separately within regions with similar density, you get a lower variance overall than if you just estimate across all densities. Because if you estimate across all densities, your estimate includes the variance in density between various points in space. So you cut up for statistical reasons and for reasons to do with the resolution at which you want your final estimates to be. So looking at the whole PAWS process, or the process of getting estimates across the whole range, you really have to decide on strata before you proceed. So I just want to show a very imprecise and sort of hopefully intuitive reason for why it's so important to cut up your survey region to stratify. So this is showing that map again of where the survey effort has happened and is going to happen. And I've just totally arbitrarily said, what if we want to find out the abundance in some sub-region? So what if you want to find out the abundance in that red bit? Well, you do have one sample in the red bit. You have this little green square here. And so you could say, well, that I'm going to use those data and estimate abundance in that whole red bit. But you may well go very wrong there, because this green square was not placed there to be representative of this red bit. It was placed there for some other reason, which I don't know. And so it may be in, and quite likely from the data that Justine showed you, quite likely it's in an area of particularly good habitat or particularly high density. And so to that extent, it might not be really representative of this area at all. So the process you really need to go to if you want to find out what's the abundance in this area is, firstly, you define the area, then you choose some samples within that area that are representative of that area. And this one isn't because it's way in the north. It was chosen without having defined this area. And similarly, what if you want to know what the abundance in this area is? Well, there were no samples placed in that area. So how do you estimate abundance there? Now, you might say you can use the abundance estimates from these things on the edges, but again, they're not really representative of that area. So focusing on this word robust, in order to get robust estimates within any area, you really need to define the area or the sub-area first, and then you need to put sampling effort in that area in a way that is representative in some sense. And the safest way to be representative is to use some sort of randomized design. And Kostip spoke briefly about some of the tools that GSLEP is providing for people to get guidance, to do randomized design and get guidance on where to place your effort in the survey region. So going back to this slide of how to get these robust estimates, step one, define the region. So you need to know where it is that at the end of PAWS, you want to be able to say how many snow leopards there are and where they are. Starting step is say what that region is. Second step is cut that into bits on the basis of what resolution you want your final estimates to be in, or by things to do with statistical efficiency like expected density or habitat. Then you do a sample within each of those subregions using a valid design. And I've spoken a little bit, and Kostip spoke some about how you can get help with valid design. And then review what your coverage is, and this is particularly appropriate for us now because we've got a whole bunch of samples and a remarkable number of samples and survey effort, which covers some of the region, doesn't cover all of the region. I mean, it's a massive increase compared to a few years ago. But the next step is to identify where the gaps in the survey effort are. So once we've, set up our strata, look at which parts of our strata aren't sampled, and then have a plan over the next 2 years or the duration of PAWS to get randomized or partly randomized survey effort within the uncovered strata in order at the end of PAWS to be able to draw inferences about snow leopard numbers across the whole range in every stratum. So I think the next step now is to review where we are with the existing effort, and Justine and Kostip have shown you some summaries of that, and to identify where it is effort should go next, having stratified on the basis of statistical efficiency and what resolution you want the final estimates to be in. Okay, so what can go wrong? Well, the three main things that can go wrong from a statistician's point of view this is number one, inadequate design. So if you don't do some sort of randomized design, then your sampling may be biased, and statisticians are quite frequently faced with data from bad designs. And while you can do fantastic things with modern statistical methods, if you don't have a decent design, you may destroy the basis for the inference calls totally. So it may not be possible to rescue you from a bad design. So that's a statistician's nightmare, is you spend a huge amount of time, but you don't have the design. And from that, we can't get robust estimates. The second worst thing that can happen is inadequate design or no design. And the third worst thing that can happen is inadequate design or no design. So really, if you don't have a good design, then no matter, you may put massive amount of effort in, and you may not be able to get robust estimates of distribution and abundance out of it. So at this sort of halfway point, I think that is the thing to focus on. Now, I've seen some examples in the presentations of really excellent designs. So it's not that this is not being done, it's just that at this point we need to be cautious that we do it. And what does inadequate mean? Well, you can have an inadequate design in all kinds of ways. The worst way is if you don't define the survey region or the sub-region in advance, so then you don't really know what it is you're sampling. Other things that have been spoken about, so you might choose subjectively your detector array locations, or if you're not doing camera traps, where you sample, if you're looking for scatter or whatever. And there is a little bit of evidence of bias in that in some plots that Justine showed earlier, the oversampling of the high ruggedness areas, for example. Then at the sort of small scale, you might put your detectors too close together if we're doing spatial capture, recapture on camera taps here, or you might put them too far apart. And I think Justine and Kostip have mentioned these guidance documents, so the protocol documents that have been developed within PAWS, and they give some guidance on how to avoid those pitfalls. Oversampling better habitats, that has been spoken about. Not sampling covariate range. So what that means is if you're interested in snow leopard density in good and less good habitats, you have to sample the less good habitats, even if you may get few captures and few recaptures in those habitats. Then the sort of overriding objective here was the robust abundance estimation to sort of give a baseline for future works, but there are related objectives, and PAWS relies on individual governments and individual NGOs and organizations contributing their effort, and the people doing the surveys, the organizations doing the surveys, they do have their own objectives, which may align somewhat but not be identical to PAWS objectives. So I think going forward in deciding how to gather further data and so on, we need to be cognizant of the objectives of those doing the surveys. And some of the related objectives, other than just getting an abundance estimate across the range, are you might be interested in the effects of conservation actions. And so to investigate that within PAWS, you need to make sure that you sample protected areas and similar non-protected areas. You might be interested in the effects of the environment. So, I mean, people know already that things like ruggedness affect density. But in order to, you may be interested in how density changes over time. And to do either of those things, you need to sample in good and less good environments. Population structure is going to be important in due course, and connectivity. And that one can get from camera traps on a sort of short time scale and from genetics on a longer time scale. Then in the longer term, we're going to be interested in changes in distribution and abundance, although PAWS at the moment, we're just trying to set the baseline. But in the longer term, perhaps we should start thinking about long-term monitoring sites. So if you're interested in monitoring across long periods, then there are designs in which you replicate some sites and not others that are efficient for estimating trends. And then lastly, of course, capacity building is a related objective, and that's an objective that I think PAWS is doing very well on so far, and hopefully that will continue. So that's all I really wanted to say. In conclusion, I wanted to say that PAWS is really an unprecedented international team effort. It involves teams from governments, from NGOs, from all kinds of organizations across many countries. And that's a really nice thing from my point of view, because the whole ends up being bigger than the sum of its parts then. The individual teams can get benefits that they would not be able to get working on their own, and PAWS certainly gets benefits by collaborating with these governments and the teams. But given that it's that there are various objectives and different teams, I think PAWS needs to be careful that it helps the partners, the people doing the survey, achieve their objectives, as well as working towards this common objective, the main one that I'm talking about here being a robust abundance estimate. And the key to that for me is collaboration and information sharing. And I think that can go both ways. So PAWS has developed resources and sort of concentrate expertise in various fields that the organizations contributing PAWS can take advantage of. And PAWS, of course, needs the information that the organizations doing the surveys gather. But I think it can be a really symbiotic relationship with benefits for both. So my last point really is just that by working with the GSLEP Secretariat, using the support they offer and the expertise they offer, I think we can, everyone can gain from it, both the individual organizations doing the on-the-ground work and the overriding objective of PAWS to get this first global robust abundance and distribution estimate. That's all I wanted to say. Let me unshare my screen and figure out how to do that.
Thank you, David. That was a really nice way to bring it all together, and I hope it clarified some of questions that people may have about the next step, because as we've all emphasized, we've come a long way already, and teams on the ground have showed what they're doing in their countries. We've shown the global effort, but there's still a long way to go. in the next 3 years. And I think that your presentation has really nicely, concisely shared what we can do. But I wonder if people in the audience have questions. So we're going to take, and we can help you unshare your screen.
Thank you. I wasn't sure I'd done it.
Here.
Okay, thanks.
So we have time for questions. If you have questions for David here, who is the chair of the technical committee, for Kustub, who shared about some of these innovations happening at the site to support teams on the ground. And then we would like to end by a little bit going even further than what we talked about today. And it's maybe the best for last, and it's more of an ideas forum where we hope to ask everyone, okay, we talked about, what's been done and what we would like to see in the future to make PAWS a reality. But there's maybe like, what is missing in that missing middle to make it reality for you as teams throughout the Snow Leopard range, and what could be possible bottlenecks, for example. And as David really nicely ended with, information sharing, for example, and collaborations is a key part for making PAWS a reality. And if, like, for example, data sharing and privacy issues might be something to discuss as a wider group in terms of what works. And I think we have actually, Ranjini has done some research on this, and she maybe has some ideas to share further. So we might go into such ideas and discussion on wider ideas related to PAWS. But before we do that, I don't know if there are questions specifically for Kustub and David related to their talks. We have a comment from Sandro, David, that says, very effective, concise talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandro.
I think that biologists should know very well what you have just told us, but I'm afraid that most of them want to get pictures, want to get numbers, and thus they bias their samples heavily, very heavily.
Well, but not everyone. I mean, some of the designs in the presentations earlier are fantastically well done.
Yeah. It was not a comment addressed to the speakers of today, of course.
Yeah.
It was an overall comment.
Great.
Great, Kustub. So, okay, I think you've blown us all away, David, with your presentation, and Kustub as well, on what needs to be done and with such clarity. But if people do have questions, please start sharing it. I might ask Ranjini maybe to take the floor and share a little bit on some thoughts about collaboration that you've been brainstorming to share with the wider group. Related to future collaborations and ways we can make this a reality for PAWS. You're on mute, LNG.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened with my video. I suddenly realized, okay, I have no idea what's happening there.
So Ranjini, you can actually, it's the virtual, yeah, it's done, sorted.
But can you see me now?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay. I have no idea how that came in, because normally my computer doesn't support that. Anyway, so very quickly, first of all, thanks to everybody for sharing so much of your data and the metadata that came in. Like both Kustub and Justine have mentioned, we were not expecting so much. So it was really, really wonderful to have so much of the sharing coming in. And as everyone's been talking about, we've achieved so much with PAWS already, but we need a little bit more to get to the final estimate. So we need like a final push to get there. So I thought we could start by maybe asking the question, like, we can open it out and ask, to get to the data sharing, what can we do to build that trust for greater collaboration and data sharing? And what can we as the PAWS team do to support that? And, maybe we could also discuss what would be some of the apprehensions of sharing data, and we could talk about how we could meet those, like we could have those bases covered and you'd be comfortable sharing it. So the thing is that different teams, so we've been doing a little bit of research on similar projects. So there's one that's called the Nutritional Network, which is actually a really fascinating project. It's across the world, people looking at plants across the world, grasslands especially, and how nutritional variations affect grassland compositions. And it's a massive project that's been happening across the world. And they have some really interesting ideas when it comes to sharing data and data privacy. So these were some examples. And Chris had also mentioned the Jaguar project that they've been working on. So different teams develop this based on, what works for them. So we were thinking we could collaboratively develop these guidelines based on what is going to be working for us. So some of the things that we could potentially think of, and please feel free to start putting it in the chat, because we want this to be as open and as free as possible. So these questions of what would be your apprehensions? How can we build trust for better data sharing? Please put in your thoughts in the chat. And while your thoughts start coming in, some things we can think of would be of course, the most important thing when it comes to ownership of data. The data is still yours. The data that you share with us, ownership and intellectual property, it still is yours, and it will also be acknowledged in all anything that comes out of PAWS. The data can also be cited if the data is put up on, say, a sharing repository. We can use the DOI from that repository. Otherwise, we cite it and make sure that the data is credited to the right sources. The other common concern could be publications, because so for example, PAWS will probably not publish before you publish your data. So we use data that's probably already been published, right? We can look at it that way. We can also help with publications, with your publication. So you might have data, and a lot of the other, the sessions before, we've discussed about how we can build capacity to analyzing that data better. So we can also help with that. We can even help and push towards seeing how this data can get published. And once it's published, we can use that data for the bigger PAWS effort. So these are some thoughts that come to mind about publications. And of course, there's citations we've covered. Things also like policies of reuse and distribution of this data. That's things we can think about. How are we going to archive the data that comes in? How can we have a plan for managing the data that comes in? What about sharing of information, not only between the PAWS team, but also across teams? That again is something we probably want to work on collaboratively and think about. What about authorship within the products that come out of PAWS? Right, that's also something we can think about. So for example, with the Nutritional Network, they have very clear publications that they want to work towards, which was set up beforehand. And they're saying that for everyone who contributes towards the data, there's the 3 main publications, and everyone gets authorship on those publications. And but of course, there's some expectations when it comes to the final outputs, like active engagement, things like that. So those are also things that we want to think about. What about outputs that come out of PAWS? How does authorship structures work? Those are things that we can collaboratively think about and work towards. So please feel free to put comments in the chat about what might be other apprehensions when it comes to sharing data, and what as PAWS we can do to ensure that we meet, we cover those bases, and we're careful about data protection, privacy. So I think those were just some thoughts. But moving forward, we were thinking of collaboratively working towards a data sharing and management practice document for PAWS, that we can work towards. So some of the other thoughts we were also having was, for example, again, going back to the nutritional network, was acknowledging that a lot of this is probably coming from the PAWS process, right? So acknowledging that it's part of the PAWS process in publications that come out that make it also, that says it's been following a certain protocol. So that could also be in, but that's just like something from other networks that are out there. So I'm just waiting for comments or thoughts.
No, I mean, you covered a lot of ground, and I think Kustub has highlighted a few things. And maybe what we can do is I think it's just good to, and this is why we especially wanted you to share today, is that this is very much will be on our agenda for thinking about the way forward. Like David said, it's about collaborations, right? And acknowledging that PAWS is a wider process, that we can support other people's objectives, and having these kind of other people's objectives at the forefront is also important for us. So I think, it's a lot to ask everyone here. I realize on the virtual format, when we're actually doing it, it's maybe a lot to ask people on the spot, but maybe what we can do is just have everyone recognize that we are aware of this and we want to provide a kind of a forum, but also a way forward that is supportive and open. Right? I think that's something we just want to highlight, we'll be working towards this in an open kind of collaborative way.
Yeah, and to further add to also what Justine has been saying and following up on, the really interesting conversations that Raghu and Sandro were having before, this can also be a potential for even wider collaborations and wider discussions, right? So even like data that's just beyond density estimates and data that's directly relevant to PAWS, if it's going to go even beyond that, and we're thinking of larger collaborations, these are also things that we can think about.
Yeah.
So,
go for it.
Quick question. I mean, maybe I know it's a little overwhelming for our wonderful audience here, but can we just maybe some of these 4 points I could capture, the others I missed out, but if people from the audience can suggest what other elements should be there in the data sharing protocol that might come together, because ultimately we want from stage A, which is designing a study, to the last stage where you report results, and there are so many steps involved, and at multiple steps there is an opportunity for us to be able to provide assistance or to be able to make ourselves useful. So if you but then there are sometimes, like for instance, in some countries it might be difficult to share data outside the country, so those can be highlighted, and then we can, when we work together on those, I think we can make sure that whatever the framework is, it's sensitive to those critical issues.
Yeah, because as Kustub, you're highlighting, it's very different across different circumstances. So I think the key is not necessary to outline what needs to be done broadly, but more what could be things that people need to discuss in their setting and their situation, because it will vary. So yeah, if anyone have further ideas of themes or captures, and this is first related to data sharing, but then we would like to actually broaden it and think, wider than data sharing. Are there other things that maybe we touched upon over the last 2 days, but maybe didn't discuss more fully, and you would like to discuss further? For example, as Ranjini said, how do we incorporate praise surveys like Kustub was mentioning, or these additional surveys into the PAWS effort? that might be something else that we need to look further in. I see everyone is hesitant. And yes,
Justine, I'm amazed because I couldn't have imagined the field from where I'm coming, that the things you're talking about, data sharing, ownership, archiving. And so the Snow Leopard group is a pleasure having a meeting like this where so much collaborative work is happening. So you're way ahead of many and species groups. And I think it's very encouraging to see this thing happening. And I wish many groups. So I congratulate you guys are able to bring people together like this and sharing data, which is very rare thing. And especially in Tiger Group, you can't have a meeting like this. I can't even imagine. So it's fantastic. Congratulations for that.
Thank you, Raghu. I think the PAWS effort is like everyone is saying, it's no one individual, right? It's governments and NGOs, individuals everywhere across the Snow Leopard range. So we were trying our best to make that possible in a collaborative and open way. And seeing where it develops as well. I think the one thing that's very encouraging about PAWS is it is open, right, to develop in certain ways. It doesn't necessarily have, of course, we're looking towards, as David said, a robust number of snow leopards, but there are many other ways we can support snow leopards or high mountain areas through research, through conservation, through this effort. So we want to try to leverage this as much as possible as a group and as a team. And I think ideas come from everywhere, right? From all different range countries, all different settings, governments. So that's why we were wanting to have it open in case there were ideas. And this is not just for now. I think, we understand that we've put everyone kind of on the spot asking you, and it can be for the future as well. So we can, like Kustub said, maybe a good idea is to have an open Slack channel for these ideas to keep rolling and coming, to address them, and maybe then develop different working groups throughout the range to maybe develop some of these ideas further. That could be maybe an idea and outcome that we could take forward. Kustub, do you think that could be a reality we could do?
Absolutely, and what a great idea that would be. It'll be really worth the little effort to set it up, create almost a virtual workspace for all of us to be there and share ideas, exchange ideas, more or less continue what we are doing right now over an extended period of time. And 10 years ago, such technological support may not have been easily possible, but now it is, and it does allow us to interact and engage with each other much better. So definitely, doable. We should be more than happy to help if that's of interest.
Yeah, and there was also a talk about a capacity building kind of network. And I think SLN has already started trying to support this kind of capacity building effort and bringing in PAWS related trainings for our members across the Snow Leopard range. And, I think it would be interesting to hear how people, have felt. So maybe we could develop this and link it more with PAWS and like Chris was saying, that could target different areas of PAWS and with the capacity building effort and a kind of online network as well. So maybe there could be a capacity building network and then genetics as well. I remember Uma was discussing. So that's another area we would really like to explore further.
Justin, I remember you all know that we used to have this 4-yearly symposium in the past, which kind of stopped. So now it's not necessarily started again because cost of traveling and everything we're looking at. But now the cost of the technology is available maybe once a year on one specific subject. You can have a meeting and where you can bring it together and have quite a bit of interactions and sharing and things like that.
Yes, and I think Alexander is here from WWF Russia, and WWF Russia is hoping to bring this forward soon. They were organizing it for last May. Maybe Alexander, you can share a little bit more what's planned now, if you're there. But a great idea, Raghu. We should have more of these forums of exchange.
Yeah, and again, I'll just re-emphasize that we should be able to use some of the technology to make it a more continued effort, and not and yes, I mean, costs and complications with travel are substantial right now. So to address, to kind of skirt those, I think it'll be really valuable to set up something and have these conversations continue, not just not just like this one day we're just meeting right now, but some of these ideas can be so valuable. I mean, I often say that, you know, feel that if you're not talking enough, then you end up with a completely closed cell ideas, and they can at times be completely of no value.
Yeah, no, this is the worst thing to happen in remote areas, because what I describe is an inbreeding of thoughts.
Inbreeding of thoughts, yes.
And another thing we're trying to do as much is get the thoughts, for example, from our technical experts, including David and others, to be shared as fast as possible, right? And accessed as fast as possible by teams. So that's another thing. I mean, I think there's 2 ways of exchange or more, you know, across the range. So we want to cultivate that exchange further. So we've been trying to upgrade the PAWS GSLEP website to do this. And I think there'll be more work in this area, right, Kustub, to make it a more interactive and also linking with the SLN. But I think the GSLEP website itself and the PAWS section can be developed to create more of this hub. But for example, it would be great to hear from you guys, you know, what kind of information do you feel you don't feel you have access to fast enough, for example, and you get it down the pipeline. That's important for us to understand. Otherwise, you know, we don't know how to improve it. So feel free to let us know about these kind of bottlenecks. I think we should leave it, you know, I don't want us to end this meeting really fast in case someone is burning to say something, but don't dare. So I think we can have another 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes before disconnecting, but otherwise then we might end the meeting early, which is totally fine, and have some more time away from our screen. But we would like maybe to leave another 5 minutes or so to see if there is anything anyone wants to bring up and highlight. If you're okay with that, Kustub, Ranjini, and David.
I was thinking, Justine, we could maybe, like, while people think, we could discuss some of the great ideas that were brought up yesterday, very briefly by both Uma and Chris, about the boot camps. And I think Uma had mentioned a platform for data sharing. Those were some ideas that had come up yesterday, just to stimulate discussion.
Sure, Ranjini, can you share more about those in case people were not there?
Yeah, so yesterday there was a really interesting idea that came up about the boot camps, where we basically have intense sessions on different aspects of the PAWS process, because a lot of the teams very often are, at similar times, because across the range, most of the timing is similar. So just before you go out to collect data, just before you begin analysis, just before different aspects of this process starts, these boot camps can take place where participants can perform, and there are, experts who come in and help with this, and they can also help each other with different aspects of the PAWS process. So that was an idea that Chris had yesterday, which I thought was very interesting. And the other thing that Uma also had brought up was, of course, one is the creation of a network, of a PAWS network, where it's for, collaboration across teams and for easy collaboration. And especially, I think she was also focused on genetics and how we can move genetics. I don't know if Uma's here and she wants to share. Maybe she's left.
But
yeah.
David is here and he had some thoughts on capacity building that maybe would be nice to hear. David, I don't know if you want to add any comments on related to Chris's thoughts and thoughts to capacity building, just thoughts, related.
All right. Yeah. I mean, that bootcamp idea sounds really good. I did have some idle thoughts because I spend too much time watching YouTube. And occasionally on YouTube, you find these really neat little videos. I want to find out, for example, doing Zoom, and I don't know how to, as I didn't know how to turn my screen off, screen sharing. But if you search on YouTube, you'll come up with, if you search, how do you screen share in Zoom, or something like that, to be a nice little video, like a 5-minute video that'll tell you exactly how to do it. So you don't have to know all the background, you don't have to know anything else about Zoom, just tells you exactly what you want to know. And so from the session yesterday, where there were some quite specific questions in the analysis session, about one was, for example, where you use this least cost path stuff to estimate non-uniform home ranges. So that's a very specific question, and people have difficulty with it because the software is actually a little bit difficult to use for that. So I thought what would be nice if I was starting up on that would be a little 5-minute video online. I could type into Google, how do you use SECR with least cost paths? And someone would take you sort of step by step, say, look, here, you enter this, here, you enter that, there, this is what could go wrong. So it struck me that it might be nice to develop a set of resources which answer very specific questions and which don't require big investment on anyone in how to do it. They just, oops, I've hit this obstacle, search quickly. Oh, there's a little video that tells me how to do exactly the little thing I needed to do. That was my idea. Of course, I'm very good at coming up with more work when I'm already overworked. And so I'm happy to throw that idea out there, but how we get it done is another question.
And that's such a valuable suggestion, David, because there's so many little obstacles that you at times get stuck with. And I remember when I was working with some data from Nepal on genetics, very simple thing of how do you create the data files. And it's a matter of really, as you say, 5 minutes for someone to explain that this is what you do. Yes, there are very nice discussion groups where Murray himself is periodically providing help. But yeah, a nice little neat collection will actually reduce the workload on Murray as well, or you as well. If you have some of these handy, that people can just go and see, this is the key step. These are the key steps you need to follow.
Yeah, another thought was that from my perspective, it's quite difficult to tell what the little obstacles are. But if people then said, oh, I'm having trouble with this, and then we could build up a resource saying, okay, well, you really need to make a video on that particular thing because everyone has that's a sticking point for everyone. So it's sort of user-led rather than sort of bottom-up rather than top-down.
Another suggestion that I see in the chat, because I mean, this is a great suggestion, David, but Marianne's wondering, is concerned about your workload. And she's saying sometimes just coming together to share ideas may help get people started and overcome small issues. So, I mean, the videos are a great idea, but maybe we could also think about, like we did Solve My Problem sessions yesterday. I don't know if we could repeat such sessions, maybe more targeted in the future if people are facing similar issues. But I don't know how you feel about those, if those maybe don't go deep enough into the concerns and maybe only hit the surface of people's issues, really. But maybe we could have, so one thing we do at the Snow Leopard Trust, which is related to community conservation concerns, is different teams present one problem with other teams, and that problem is dissected for everyone to learn from. So it could be just one problem shared with the expert, but everyone learns from that experience of solving that problem, you know, if they're facing similar issues. But I'm just also throwing out an idea out there.
I think that is a labor-saving idea because there's less overhead to attending a short meeting than there is to making a short. By the way.
Though it may also depend on how many times you need to do that, how many times you need to organize a meeting of that sort. But yes, definitely, I think the targeted Solve My Problem session could be a starting point. And it's not a big deal for us to nowadays get these recorded, right? And if some of those can be recorded, one of us can convert them into a video as well. So there we go.
It can be a mixed method approach.
Of course.
I see also suggesting a frequently asked question forum compiled via PAWS.
So Raghu sir, you want to say something?
I was just wondering, because to increase our sampling areas, does PAWS has its own set of, say, camera set is a very cost limiting in the projects and sampling where we do. So if you have a set of cameras for 2-3 sampling areas, which can be shared by different teams, moved around those cameras in different countries, maybe something will help quite a lot, because that could be a very limiting factor for people. For every project to have new equipment, it's better sharing. And so a group of, say, some countries share one set, some countries share, others share, and things like that.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, sir. In fact, something similar we're trying to do between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan in a couple of landscapes. It's still in the planning stage, so we're not very sure how far we'll go with that, but it's definitely an important issue, and equipment is often the bottleneck in getting some work done on the field. Thank you.
But which touches upon a big bottleneck I think we discussed yesterday with Tom McCarthy, which is funding, which is something we will have to be very imaginative about how to address large scale.
Great.
Any other thoughts? Otherwise, maybe we can, like Kustu says, we can continue these discussions through a Slack channel or some other kind of platform to keep them moving. And sharing across experiences. I think one thing that's also would be nice is different, having a platform for countries and teams to share also on their experiences. We've heard from 3 countries today, but as we shared, there are over 29 teams that have submitted information to PAWS already. So there's much more to learn about what people's experiences. So I don't know if we can have a platform for other teams to also share their experiences and knowledge to do so. So yeah, maybe we can take this forward offline or online remotely. Any last thoughts, Kustu, Pranjini, or David?
Just thank you for everyone for attending, for everyone who presented. Thank you so much.
Yeah, seriously, from the bottom of our hearts, cannot thank you all enough for not only joining this meeting today and yesterday, but also providing with so much of valuable information that has made this PAWS initiative look like it's progressing well. And of course, I mean, I can never thank our technical oversight panel enough for constant guidance and giving the time, whenever we've needed their assistance. and of course, ultimately to all the range country governments for their ownership of this entire initiative. As Dr. Chundavat mentioned, none of this would have been possible had there not been this widespread ownership and acceptance and camaraderie of working together for snow leopard conservation. So yeah, thank you everyone. But David, for the last word, sir, please.
Oh, you're doing this to me always.
All the time. There we go. You should have known that by now.
I wasn't expecting that. Well, yeah, thanks very much. So my perspective is different from most other people's, I think, because I come to it from as a statistician who's never been up a mountain with a snow leopard, never seen a snow leopard. So I think I bring quite a different perspective. But from my perspective, it's a fantastic opportunity. It's working on something, on a team which is collaborating in quite an unprecedented way that I haven't seen with any other species. And it's an opportunity for me to make a real difference. So it's really nice to be able to help people with the people who are doing the real work. So I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to work with you guys. And I think it's been going fantastically, and I'm sure it will end fantastically.
Thank you, guys. So this is the end of our first virtual PAWS Summit. We do have another virtual talk by Munip, who is actually filmed it all the way in the field almost in Kashmir, filmed it so to give this presentation. And he's going to talk about a publication that came out a few years ago that was, that provided some support in thinking about PAWS and the issues behind the history of PAWS. The sessions and the breakout sessions will be available from yesterday on the Attendify platform, and then hopefully linked to the PAWS website. So stay tuned. And we hope to do this again, maybe in a year or 3 years, and see and take stock on where we have come or where we will go with PAWS. So to the PAWS team, thank you everyone and all participants. Yeah, let's log off, get some coffee. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.